Blackwood Manor and its adjoining lands had been on the market for years by the time James Johnson noticed the listing in the front window of the local realtors. It was clear how desperate the previous owners had been to sell when Johnson saw the amount they had been willing to let Blackwood go for. It was a price too good to be true, he admitted to his wife, Judith, but it was far too good to even pass up the opportunity to have a look. For the young family of 5, it was everything, and soon. It would become much more than that. That morning, James had decided to pluck up enough courage to do something he had never done before and make the trip up to the manor. He took his wife with him to see what she thought of the place. The pair drove up from the capital of Clifton in their little Volkswagen Golf, with their 3 young children, Amelia, Edward, and Ruby, in the back. Surprisingly, Judith was just as thrilled with the place as he was. It was like a dream, she said. Both of them had been in awe. A week later, and they were all in attendance to finalize the papers. The family took their first steps into Blackwood Manor and were enamored before they were through the threshold. A series of corridors sprawled before them in an enormous castle, and their echo brought forth excitement, happiness, and freedom. It was more than any of them had ever had before. Blackwood Manor seems like the perfect place for ghost stories. Yet, when growing up in Waynesboro, GA, I never heard of any legends surrounding my spooky old family home. It's likely that the lack of stories was due to the fact that no one had lived in that house for more than 6 months for several years. That is, until the Johnson family moved in. When I was 11, old enough to notice certain things that adults would disregard, and perhaps old enough to be more in tune with the unexplainable. My family struck a deal with the owner of Blackwood Manor after they had already been trying to sell the place, by that time, for at least 5 or 6 years. It sported a low price and a 13-acre yard and ink-black pond that would have my little sister and me in awe. So we decided to rent with the idea of buying held in sight if we should enjoy it. Blackwood Manor sprawls like an aging yet stately spider on the corner of a block in one of the oldest neighborhoods in all of the central Georgia town. Houses crafted before and just after the turn of the century attempt to outdo one another with their cedar siding, brick facades, and wrap-around verandas, apparently all in an effort to show off to gape-mouthed visiting yokels. The 2-story front of the Union Avenue. Manor sits almost, yet not quite, flush against the sidewalk before zigging back to the familiar overhang of the first of 2 wide porches and zagging again back, upward and toward the north of the manor. Spectre-like splotches, in yellow, slate blue, maroon, sea foam green, and black, now stood testament to several layers of poor skilled paint jobs under the ancient eaves. Deterioration from either nature or flame-filled history beheld the wide planks from underneath. Unexplained phenomena Robert had been living in Blackwood Manor for a week before anything odd occurred. At first, unexplained noises and other minor inconveniences made him wonder if he was right to move in with such short notice, or if it might even be better to cut his losses and admit that maybe the place was too good to be true. One of his earliest and most minor annoyances was when he woke one Sunday morning to find the carpet outside of his room was drenched through. He could feel the sogginess of it beneath his slippers. He chalked it up to early damage, but the noise he heard played on his mind all day. There was the door creaking, your usual groan experienced when the hotel elevator slips up a floor. Although, if there was an elevator that could make it all the way up to the mezzanine, he wasn't complaining. The radio hadn't been a problem before, either. He would turn it to a frequency with the least amount of snow, and when he was hard at work, he'd sing along to the station, occasionally hurt by the sound of the strings. Johnny got lost. Johnny got lost. He'd sing tunelessly but enthusiastically. The off-key notes had earned a couple of knocks at his door early on to complain that was the most human interaction he had with any other tenant. Despite it all, he had managed to go a week without anyone butting heads with him about the racket, minus a few shy scuffs later in the week and this newly discovered waterlogged carpet. With this happening after a smooth few days of the radio, he could only think it was rusted, or maybe those neighbors on the other side of his wall finally up and left out of fear.